Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit and the two-sided limit as x approaches pi of negative cotangent of x. Each of these involves the limit as x approaches pi of the negative cotangent of x. The first thing to do is try plugging a pi in for each of the x's. That'll give negative cotangent of pi, which is equal to negative cotangent of pi is the cosine of pi, which is a negative 1, over the sine of pi, which is a 0. The negative can multiply with the negative 1 in the numerator, giving a positive 1 divided by 0. That 0 in the denominator is not actually a 0, since x is only approaching pi here, it never reaches it. But a limit result of a non-zero number over 0 equals positive infinity or negative infinity, where the sign of the infinity often depends on the side the limit approaches from. So we will have to work out each of the one-sided limits separately. We have the left-sided limit indicated by the negative superscript on the pi. And the right-sided limit indicated by the positive superscript on the pi. Let's start with the left-sided limit. The first thing to do is rewrite the trig function so we can see what is making 0 in the denominator. This will be the negative of the cotangent of x is the cosine of x divided by the sine of x. X is approaching pi here, and the sine of pi is a 0, so it's the sine function that's making 0 in the denominator. We're going to analyze that a little bit closer for the side we're approaching from. X is approaching pi from the left side. That means less than pi. On the unit circle, less than pi will put it in the second quadrant. And the sign in the second quadrant is a positive. As x approaches pi, sine approaches 0, but it will remain positive from the left side. So we can replace sine with a positive 0. The pi can then plug in for all other x's, which will give negative cosine of pi divided by a positive 0, which is equal to a negative, the cosine of pi is a negative 1 over positive 0. A negative times a negative 1 is a positive 1 over a positive 0. Positive over positive is positive, non-zero over 0 is an infinity, and there's the result of the left-sided limit. The right-sided limit can work out in a similar fashion. The cotangent is cosine over sine, and it's the sign that's making 0 in the denominator as x approaches pi. This time it's approaching it from the right side, which is greater than pi. On the unit circle, that will put it in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, sine is a negative number. As it approaches pi, sine approaches 0. Therefore, we can replace the sine with a negative 0, because it will stay negative. All other x's can have a pi be replaced in for them. That will give us negative cosine of pi over what will be a negative 0 for the third quadrant. This will give negative cosine of pi is a negative 1 over the negative 0. In the numerator, negative times negative is positive 1 over negative 0. A positive over a negative is a negative, and non-zero over 0 is an infinity, and there's the result of the right-sided limit. The two-sided limit depends on the results of the two one-sided limits. They do not match each other. So the two-sided limit up here will be, does not exist. And there is the results of the three different limits.